Ian Chu, is it coming? Ian Chu?
I think he's coming.
Okay.
Yeah.
Said that he wants to dive in.
Ian Chu?
Sorry, that's coming from my YouTube. So the YouTube link is working.
No.
Okay. So the Hangouts link is in the Slack channel.
In general.
In general, yes.
I was expecting to print another message.
Okay. So let's start with the roadmap, and then I'll get to. Well, let's take a look at the agenda. So I have the parallel test demo that I'll give on behalf of.
Should we project the roadmap or project the agenda?
Yeah, so I can project it from here, I think. Screen share. So. So in the agenda, I have the parallel test demo that I'll be giving on behalf of Benjamin. That got shipped recently. I wanted to show version documentation. I'm not sure why this changed, but okay. Release and versioning policy. Who added that one?
That was me.
Okay, so we'll talk about that. And roadmap review. Okay. So let's go look at the roadmap first. And then we'll do the demo, and we'll talk about the release and versioning policy, and we'll look at versioning documentation. Who added the version documentation link, by the way? Point?
I don't know.
History. Files. Revision history.
Maybe Austin or Tim.
Oh.
Are there people online
But everyone's anonymous in this stuff.
Is it?
on the Hangout?
Oh, it's still okay. So I'm not sure who added that, but it looks like the patch is from Tim. Okay, so let's go through the roadmap first.
Can you like zoom in a bit?
Read that.
Yeah. Alright, so I guess we'll probably go in edit mode.
Yeah, we should. Okay.
So weren't we planning to move this to docs or something? What happened? The roadmap?
Don't move this.
It was-
Roadmap. It's already in the doc.
Is it in the doc?
There should be a version.
Okay.
You mean the one in the docs directory right now in our repository? I don't think it has these. From what I saw, it just has links. It has a link to this page, and it has
Okay.
some other links. But
Okay.
Yeah, it's a business page.
But at some point we wanted to move this, right,
We want to move a lot, not just to dock.
to the repo?
Can I just move the working group stuff to the dock?
Okay.
And move this one to the dock.
Okay, okay, so for now, let's still
Okay,
use this.
cool.
So 1.0, that's done, we can remove that. Operator API MVP is done, the 4791 ticket, that seems closed, right? Did we not close it?
So which parts are beta? All of it or?
It's just-
The operator API is still beta. Yeah, everything is beta. I haven't called it stable yet. The scheduler exec API, we call it stable.
So this one also.
So deprecation policy applies to that.
Yeah, we'll talk about the application policies when we come to the release policy discussion. Yeah, so
Good.
Windows support,
Was that right? The schedule API also?
yeah,
Actively being worked on.
is it still actively being worked on?
Yep.
Okay,
We're fixing
GPU.
the path problem.
okay. So 4424.
The GPU support's probably not closed because we didn't finish the Docker containers to support, but you might as well remove it from here.
Remove it from here?
So is,
I think the only reason that Epic is still open is that it's not supported with the Docker containers.
so we should probably close that epic and create a new epic, or other containerizer. So that we could call this out in the changelog and stuff.
I think it's been called out.
Oh, it's been, okay. Gotcha, let's close this and create a new one. So I've been doing for some of the big epics. As once MVP is done, we close that. Create a new one for the, so, okay, that did that. And is that one actually being worked on?
Yeah, IBM and NVIDIA have been working on it, so it's almost ready. I'm
Okay,
just gonna schedule a hangout with them to review it.
okay. So maybe just have a placeholder here for GPU support for Docker containerizer, one of the things, and then we'll link it.
Yeah.
If you or Kevin who is shepherding that work.
I'm getting Kevin to review it, but yeah, I have to commit, so.
Okay, all right. So shepherd, and okay, shared volumes, that's not it, right? Kill that one.
Is it done?
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, so this is like, we started to close Epics more aggressively. So we closed this and we have an MVP and we're using it. So, but we also created a follow-up Epic.
Okay, so we should do
So,
that one.
Um,
What's the follow-up if it called?
I don't know what the,
Shared volume improvements, I guess?
Yeah.
Okay. And
Exactly
that's,
that.
that's being actually worked on?
Yeah,
So is all the documentation landed?
Documentation has landed.
And that's experimental, right? The shared volumes?
And are you guys writing a blog post? It's a big feature, right? Like.
On Mesos website.
Yeah.
shouldn't,
Should write a lot of blog posts.
should that go out when it's out of experimental or should it?
I think we want people to try it while it's experimental. Just make like in caps or whatever, call it experimental, but I think it's a big feature.
Yeah. We need to write one for pods as well.
So we need to wait for the 3 or 4 Jiras which are not yet closed, like in the improvements epic that we moved to be closed before we do that, or?
Well, I don't know what that entails, but I think if you guys are
We
using
have
it, it seems-
benchmarks, example test framework, and one bug fix.
Yeah.
Did I miss anything?
And I think if you're comfortable with people trying it out, at least in dev clusters.
Yeah, I think if Pods has one, then this can have one too.
Yeah, we should write a blog. Yeah, we should first write the user doc. I haven't written the user doc yet for pods, task groups. And then we write a blog post for that. Yeah,
that would be great.
Linux capabilities, G, that's landed.
Yes.
Okay, so I can call that one.
Do you need a blog post for this too?
I
There's a
think
user doc.
yes, user doc, it depends. Do you think users would be interested?
Probably handy for people to figure out how to use them. I don't think it's intuitive, like,
Yeah, so that's better in the user doc, right?
but not in the like walk through in 5 minutes demo way.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if Benjamin wants to write it, I would say ask him to write it.
Awesome.
I think we can have as many blog posts as we can. It's a barren land right now.
Agent partitioning?
Agent partition that's actually being worked on. Yeah, Neil is working on it, I'm shepherding it. Allocated
Are there-
performance.
Are there multiple phases to it, right? There's 3 phases for the allocated performance stuff?
Yeah, but I think they're all
Agent
captured in the
partition.
same ticket. We don't have enough of it landed in 1.1. So 1.2 is the release that's gonna have most of it.
So is there a different ticket? Because this one says it's resolved.
Yeah, so 4049 is resolved. I think it's probably gonna create another one.
Okay, so just update that section. We're gonna keep a ticket there, but it's gonna point to another.
Yeah, just
Yeah, that's what I meant.
just remove the ticket there and I will add a new one.
Allocated performance, so
Mostly for this one, we're just waiting for Jacob's patch, which does batching in the allocator, and then Mesos. It's not much of work, but that's going to be things.
Okay.
I haven't been able to participate in this much at all, so.
It's almost done, I think. Ian has been reviewing that.
Yeah, we can probably sync after this. I think the patch itself is mostly okay. Probably more benchmark tests are necessary, and we're thinking about it.
Are you still looking at this, yours?
Every now and then,
So I think there are 1 or 2 more things that could be optimized in the allocator that I know of. For example, the sorting in general in the allocator and the DI sorter. Currently it's just a set where most of the time sorted insertion is being done, but from time to time, at least in the framework sorter, essentially every time we allocate something, we have to sort the whole thing again. And sorting the whole set is
in the allocator.
absolutely,
I
yeah.
think this ticket was mainly targeted to getting to a specific kind of.
Yeah, I think the intention of this one was to prevent the potential for huge backlogs to the allocator.
Yeah.
And so, right, the main idea here was, like, if we did the batching patch, I think that would be enough for this. I mean, we have to close it at some point, right? And so we did file separate tickets.
Sure.
We just,
Maybe word it a little differently, maybe.
Okay.
So maybe names.
yeah, we can, well, we can,
We can do it offline.
yeah, we can do it offline.
Yeah.
Benchmark.
Benchmark, that's never happened. I don't know if it's gonna happen next 3 months.
Okay.
I put it in the medium term because we still want to get it at some point. I don't know what the state of the benchmark is. Are they now running in a reasonable time or are they still taking infinite long time to finish?
You doing benchmark test?
I think some of them got cleaned up. I don't know if all of them did.
But no one is actually working on
I
it.
don't know.
Last I heard,
Adding some, and they've all been taking, I made sure they take a reasonable amount of time, but I don't know about the existing.
Okay, so,
It's pretty trivial work to clean them up. I
okay,
just haven't prioritized it,
yeah,
but it's not that much work.
yeah. It's not going to doesn't look like we have plans for it in the next 3 months. I don't see any of that. So, I'll put it in unless someone in the community wants to fix it, I guess enough of the library to shepherd. And I'll enable it in the CI. I think I already have a job that does the thing. I just haven't enabled it because it now finishes today.
Guanya and Klaus were doing some of them, but I don't know if they did all of them.
Yeah. Some of them probably just marginally improving performance, but so we changed something to make it worse, but that's mainly because the previous benchmarks for allocation only looked at like very few number of frameworks. And in reality, we do need to test for like a large number of frameworks. So just by tweaking that number, it kind of just prolonged. But ultimately, so I think Benjamin and I chatted a little bit. So it feels like it's one thing to fix its tests, to have them finish earlier, but it's another thing to probably select a few representative parameters to run in the CI. So it's probably too hard of a requirement to require everything ever checked in to guarantee some basic max time, but these can be disabled for CI, as I was suggesting, so we can look into that as well.
Okay.
I think there are like a large number of permutations of which we could choose a few. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, there's probably like a category of things that we might call simulations that take a longer time. Like a lot of the stuff we're doing in some of the allocator benchmarks, it's like simulating a cluster for a while and doing a bunch of allocations. So the other benchmarks are like, let's take this piece of code, do some stuff to it, and how long does that take?
I feel like they do that simulation though, because we don't have a way to initialize the allocator into a specific state. They're just trying to like get it into that state to then run the actual benchmark.
How long do we have for this?
Yeah.
An hour.
Okay, so we should probably.
Yeah, we can move on.
Okay.
Unified subgroup allocator, isolator, rather, two.
That one is done, I'll send it now.
Okay, great. App C runtime support,
And that one is done.
cool. Improve reliability, usability of dynamic reservations.
So this one has never been looked at,
Okay,
and but I think we haven't decided yet, but I think we're gonna spend some time in the next 3 months to look at certain elements, probably not necessarily be tied to dynamic reservations now,
okay.
but
Is this about like getting receipt or confirmation about the reservation actions? We do have I do have two upstream teams inside Uber that's also interested in improving the usability. So yeah.
right. Whether or not it's strictly reservation operations, I guess it's not clear to me yet. So
Okay,
you can take it out and I can add it back in, or
okay,
I'd say push it into the medium term for now if you think it's gonna get in like 6 months at least and then pull it back in.
right then.
sure, that works. Okay.
Okay,
So that's
so that's all the cleanup, and I guess we need to add stuff that we know are actually we're working on this quarter. So we should probably go like shepherds wise, or at least across the table,
Sure.
just to add stuff that we know that we're working on, the big ticket items. I can start for what I'm
like
shepherding.
in 10 minutes.
Okay, you can
Go.
start this. Okay.
So I want to add this garbage collection stuff.
What is it?
So there's a image garbage collection. So right now in the manufacturing container, right, so we're doing garbage collection layers that we cached on codes. So we need to do garbage collection.
Is it like a big, is it an epic kind of
Yeah, I
thing?
think it's an epic.
It's
It's
a lot
not
of-
a trivial problem.
Okay.
It's like a GC, JVM is not a trivial problem.
Does the cache now has size cap?
That's from the same mapping. So we need to figure out that part. Yeah.
Okay, so image garbage collection, what else are you shepherding?
So I have a bunch of hold on. So OCI image spec support.
Okay.
Providing auto backend for provisioner.
An auto backend?
Yeah, just say auto backend for like image provisioner.
It's not Epic, right?
Yeah, just something I wanna finish. And just control U limit support.
Just system.
Just controlling the U limit support.
This CTL.
Don't support.
The networking stuff.
So something we already worked on, do we need to put that there, the port mapper? Okay, so port mapper is already done.
Okay.
Oh, the other one, CNN networking statistics.
CNN network.
And C group namespace support.
C group lineage support?
C group's namespace support, yeah.
Going through months.
What about block IO?
Yeah, so I would say like not just specific block IO, like getting C groups, support all the C group subsystems.
Support all C group subsystems.
What does it mean?
So right now we only support CPU memory,
Okay.
some of the rest we don't support, we just plan to support all of them.
Okay.
G all over the place.
Okay.
All of C groups, what, sorry?
All the C group subsystems.
Subsystems.
And are there tickets for all of this already?
Not yet, I'm gonna create tickets.
Okay.
Just on the list I have here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's it.
That's all?
Oh yeah, so maybe it's not, yeah, you don't know this support.
Okay, that's big.
Oh, it's that call.
What about auth
Can someone
support?
else shepherd this?
Which one?
That's a different system. So SecComp, so
SecComp,
I think IBM is already working on that.
Sec-
SecComp,
SECCOMP,
secure compute.
That's
SECCMP.
COMP.
Is user namespace the same as the system D?
Also see proxy support, auth support, I guess those are small items.
Yeah, those are pretty small items.
Okay. Okay,
But so this SecComp thing, you're not gonna be the shepherd for that, is that what you're saying?
I don't know. Yeah, maybe like you should put my name on that.
So do you want me to just leave it like this, or you want me to?
No, just put my name there, I can try to find someone else.
Okay.
we're doing all of this in the 3 months.
Well, some of them are pretty small thing, and some of them we have to finish, I guess.
Really cool. So for SecComp, maybe as SecComp isolated.
Yeah, I would say like a SecComp user namespace, maybe like to mid-term or near-term. Like, I'm a little afraid that that we cannot finish all of them.
Those two things were finished on Parker for more than a year or so. So
Okay.
So we basically Gene is sort of help, so if anyone is looking for work, there are tickets here, epics here, that's good.
Okay, that's my stuff.
Okay,
Okay,
thanks.
cool. Who wants to go next?
So I think Joseph is shepherding, making the test infrastructure public.
Yes.
Yeah, like cluster stuff and cluster HTTP and stuff.
To support things like making module tests.
Installing headers before the testing infrastructure, like cluster.http, like start master, start agent, mock exec,
Oh, okay.
so that we don't have to hack configure files and stuff.
Besides, so it's test framework for modules, Yeah.
Specific.
Yeah, I think it's more generic than that, but I think the immediate use case is for modules, yeah.
That's big.
Yeah, we're gonna do a bunch of test cleanup in that.
Okay.
I think it's quite a bit of work.
Okay.
Well,
Maybe instead of framework, put infrastructure, because framework in Mesos is a.
I guess what you're asking, it's more, is it really calling out?
In the roadmap.
Which
Yeah,
sounds like.
Oh, yeah.
It's pretty logical.
Yeah,
I think so.
yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's like that.
What else, Joseph, what are you shepherding?
So I'll be doing the CLI work. There's something in the medium term for the CLI. Pull that up.
Medium, yeah, that should be,
This is CLI.
okay, yeah, that's shepherding, okay.
Oh, this is also,
That's a new Mesos CLI.
wait.
Looks like there's a CMake item in there. Like that is going there soon as well. So the CMake built it.
Let's see, is it down here?
Sort of a sub-Jira for the Windows support. It's
Pretty big.
yeah, it's pretty big.
Has been actually worked on, CMake, getting it to completion. Full
I
parity,
just think it might reach completion.
and it is the full parity with auto tools.
So the point we want, yeah.
Okay. Okay, CMake,
I'm also planning to finish up the master detector and master contender modules.
okay,
Those are not usable at the moment.
like modularize,
They're missing a third module that's needed.
okay.
It's the big group module. Otherwise, you can't actually add it to the master detector.
Okay, and this for that CD support and stuff like console, okay. So,
We're not explicit.
okay. What about Windows, you already have, or they already?
Yeah, Windows,
Okay.
I guess you can add my name as a shepherd.
Yeah.
For both shepherds.
Okay. Anything else?
All for me?
Okay.
Hey, G,
Are you
is
using a logging?
this
What's wrong?
unified containerized group links? Is that all done already, or is that something that you want to keep in medium term?
Yeah, I would just remove that one, so I think we just subdivide this one into a bunch of smaller.
Okay. Yeah, and the user namespace stuff was up here anyway.
Yeah, and we probably want to remove hot support, yeah.
Yes.
Remove that. Yeah. And
Oh, is it done?
I think we want to have a ticket there up top
also for improvement.
for odds.
And this is like everyone or what?
With my name and Jiggy's name on it. I think we want to call it pod support or nested container support.
That's
Well, slash nesting containers. Task group, that's not on. Task group and nesting containers. Remove the word on.
That's it.
Create task groups, like create nested containers.
Like that?
Okay,
Containers.
so we will have some happy guys go next, what are the stuff that they're working on?
Joseph, about the thing you're collaborating with Eager, do you want to put on the roadmap or not? That's sort of to get already improvement, anything?
That's sort of gonna need G input,
Thinking offline.
so I'm not sure if that's actually feasible.
The next 3 months.
Yeah.
Okay. Alright,
So we are looking at certain aspects of restartable tasks and
restartable task, okay. So
Um,
design doc go up today.
what's that?
I saw the design doc go up today.
Yeah, that's that. So
Restartable tasks, important.
What is it
right,
called?
restartable tasks.
Restartable tasks.
And specifically, we're gonna look at the part that's not in the pod design doc. I feel like there's a clean divide between restartable tasks restarted by the agent and restartable tasks restarted by the executor. So
But would the policy, would it look similar in terms of the protocol?
it should be the same thing, at least.
Okay, okay. What else? What are the big things that you guys are working on?
I know that you're looking at a new message flow thing.
Yeah.
But are we sure it's gonna be the next 3 months?
Is it a Mesos thing or is it internal thing?
We should prioritize that.
How should we,
Is that a Mesos thing or something?
Yes, I know that we talked about that already. We wanted to take a look at the current message flow and see how we can optimize that. For example, other messages that we could batch, or also, for example, being able to re-register in a suppressed state so that we don't immediately get offers that we don't need. And also maybe implement the request resources message that's already there but has never been used, so that frameworks that know exactly what resources they need can just request instead of receiving thousands of us, just to decline 99%.
So
Kind of a
those,
requirement for federation, that's where that came out of.
okay. So those all look like different epics. So probably once you guys figure out which ones are going to work on this quarter, you can add something there.
Yeah.
Those all look like big ticket items.
Okay.
At least we cannot capture all of them in one epic. Like message improvements, that seems not very action.
This is just an allocator message flow.
Okay.
It wouldn't include like batching status updates. Out of scope or also in scope?
I think it would make sense to look into that. I don't know if it's like in scope for that particular thing, but I think the more we can optimize the better. I mean, I think for us really, I mean, message flow is really important because we of course have.
I was just trying to understand if it was like a concern over like networking, centralized up on master, or if it was
Yeah.
framework, a framework related issue where there's lots of frameworks and there's too much messaging. Framework.
I think it's how like very few actions can trigger massive amounts of network bandwidth.
Right.
Whereas status updates, you kind of have an expected number of them for the number of tasks you're running. If you just suppress, revive, you could be sending hundreds of thousands of messages over the network every second.
So I
That's
guess
kind of the focus there.
so we're running out of time. So I would say take 1 minute for each person to put items, and let's not discuss the specifics.
Yeah.
Who wants to go next? Anand?
So I'm shepherding the operator API improvements, but I need to file another epic for that. We haven't
Okay.
got around to filing.
Operator API improvements. What else?
And so we still have some pending item from the scheduler API improvements. So which we should again, a few weeks back, we already removed that.
Okay, schedule API improvements.
Yeah.
We need one.
Schedule it.
Okay. Ben?
It's not me, but do we want to move up to the interactive debugging to 3 months? It's in the 3 to 6.
Interactive debugging, this one.
That's
Who is it?
That's shepherded by, you can add my name. And Ben was also shepherded.
I found it more cheated. So you want to move up multi-role support for 3 months timeframe. And we should add a hierarchical role support, but either it's like just on the border of 3 months, I think. It's not clear.
You think, yeah? I guess the design doc would be out.
Depends if we implement it in parallel. I would just put it in 3 months for now.
Hierarchical role.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. What else? Cool. Yours? Are you done with yours? Yeah. You guys have anything that you were working on or wanted to work on?
Oh, sorry, here.
Okay. Dan, Emperor, do you have something?
I guess I'll finish playing Tiny in the next 3 months.
Again, partition. The other big thing I think that graduates working on and shepherding is secrets passing and using, and it's a whole story for it.
Secrets passing and
Using.
using.
I think we can probably break that down to agent, executor, auth as one, and secrets for fetching, another one,
So you want that as a single ticket?
separate ticket.
Separate ticket. So secrets.
For fetching URIs and images.
URIs and images.
Yeah. And that's the big ticket items.
These are both you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's for now. Some other things are in flux.
Are you guys doing more work for permissions on volumes?
So we put that as a part of the shared volumes enhancements. So it's already inside that.
Okay. That's a lot of stuff, guys. But okay. So let's come back to the ones that I highlighted in red, since we should see if those are still applicable or if they need to be updated or something like that. We hit some of them today, but let's come back to them next time.
Like health checks, I haven't added it. Do we need an epic for that? Is it still being actively worked on? Do you guys know?
It's just being tested.
But I think there are some other improvements that you wanted to make that Alexa is working on.
So the HTTP functions try to work with here since they're done. But I don't know what the improvements. I think it's just code refactoring, at least what Alex sent me in the patches. There's some other stuff.
You can propose it some other time.
Okay, all right, move on to the next stuff.
Is it included the content capture, the continuous specified?
Okay, next, what do you want to talk about? Release?
Yeah. Well, okay, hold on. Let me do the demo real quick. And then we can.
I guess in 2 months, we should have a release. Deprecation, upgrade policies. Since it's pretty clear that we need to update those.
Oh, update them? Yeah.
No one knows.
Is that a roadmap item? What do you mean? It's not clear.
No one's gonna tell us anything after this demo.
Okay, so. Oh, I should make this bigger.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, I'll make it I'll make it a lot shorter than what I intended to. But basically, if you now configure your build with enable parallel test execution, then your make check will execute your tests in parallel, all except for the root tests, since the root test makes some global changes to the system. So those are still executed sequentially. So I've already done that so that I don't have to spend time building. If we make, then even with 8, you'll see. So these are all these dots are actually all the tests running simultaneously. So that was started in the process. You'll see the Mesos gtest runner Python script here, and dash sequential will still let you specify the pattern for which you want to pattern for tests that still need to run in sequentially. And so when you configure with enable parallel tests, this is the default mode. that gets used.
I know dots coming out, does it mean there's nothing running?
We don't actually know what's happening right now.
Oh, it's linking. That's what's happening. Did you do debug?
Probably. No, it's
No,
it's something else. No.
It's probably linking. HTOP, LD.
That's really unfortunate.
So the output for the results, like if the test fails, are they now interleaved, or does it figure out how to keep one test's output together?
There's a ticket to improve the messages, but I don't know yet.
It's all dynamically and.
And nicely?
Yeah, they're not like interleaved.
Oh, that's nice.
Meaning like you won't read one line from one test having run the other line.
Right.
Yeah. There's split out.
Do we need a roadmap item for the parallel tests, or is it almost done?
It's going.
They don't pass. There's a lot of failures.
So
You're gonna have to keep working on it.
Okay, so we need to have a roadmap ticket for this as
okay,
well.
I'll add it.
Oh, what?
You run it?
In parallel? No.
Oh, yeah, they don't pass. At least for me,
Look it up to our CI or something.
this looks pretty green so far, but mine was like a lot.
Oh, okay. So I thought this was done, so we have to fix them.
I think there are some tests that still need to be fixed.
Okay.
I thought you
But
also,
there goes. And something's wrong with Ben's machine, we know. No, I don't know.
Is it supposed to be a dot per test?
I'm not sure actually. It's a good question. I don't know.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. We have a lot more testing now.
Yeah, but maybe that's why they passed, because they're only 15 or 20.
Is it a dot per test, or is it just dots based on progress?
I have more dots.
Looks like one test per sub-process.
It looks like it might actually just be showing you progress.
But the dot is printed after sub-process dot checkout, but
So process that checkout.
it's.
And where does output go to?
Terminal at the end.
Oh, terminal at the end.
How are your test machines so fast? How many different?
These are stout and then process tested.
Oh.
And then
Those are.
these are the Mesos tests.
Those are still linking this.
Well, right now it's I'm running again. It's linking again.
So I just ran mine, it's like the first 4 dots are red. Then there's a green dot.
Okay. Anyway, I mainly wanted to just show how to use it. And so from here, after you configure it with enable test parallel, enable parallel test, you can set the test runner environment variable. So this part here is the default test runner variable when you configure with enable parallel test. And so if you were to here do make check and leave this empty. Oh wait, that didn't do what I thought it would. Oh no, this will.
It might be because I have a lot of cores on this machine. So it's just running more things at the same time. And some tests assume a certain location, so they fight each other more likely. But like, most of the dots are red.
Okay.
Okay, I think we can.
Anyway, we can definitely look into why that doesn't work.
And so does the G-test filter work with parallel?
The G-test filters, well, I haven't tested it myself, but let's ask.
And like shuffle or repeat?
Yeah, I haven't tested them myself.
Okay. All right.
Cool.
Who shifted and Kevin?
I think it was Kevin and Till.
So, okay, sorry. No one in this room knows.
Oh, yeah. yeah, I haven't really had an opportunity to play with it too much, so.
Okay.
But yeah, that was that, and let's move on to node. Oh yeah, I'll add an item to the after. Stop. Okay.
All right.
So release and version policy.
Yeah, so I think the biggest question has been around what does V1 mean? When are we going to get to V2? And how does V1, V2, etc. play with deprecations and upgrades, and stuff like that? What can be deprecated? What cannot be deprecated in V1? So I think the current thing, so first of all, V2, at least my intention, original intention was not that V2 is only going to be made, or V2 is only going to be made if when they're breaking changes of some sort. My intention was V2 was only going to be made when we do something drastically different, like maybe we do gRPC style API, and we add WebSockets or maybe HTTP2, and if that changes API completely, that's at least my intention that's when we're going to introduce V2. It was not the intention that if something was introduced in VY, we cannot remove it until V2. That was not the intention. I think that's how it was reflected in the doc. But the idea is that anything in the API, and by API I mean whether it's a framework API, operator API, whether it's a flag, whether it's an environment variable, anything can change as long as there's a deprecation period for it. So which means if there's something in the V1 API that we want to change that might look backwards incompatible, we could still do it as long as we give heads up to people for 6 months. So for example, there are things like health tech that came up recently, which was definitely a breaking change without giving a heads up. So that was a case where we shouldn't have done it without giving a heads up.
Well, it also was there was a deprecation.
Yeah, that's why it was done in the wrong way. I think part of the confusion was that the people who did it thought that it was experimental, so they could do it. And people who were using it didn't think it was experimental. And that's why there was this confusion on why we removed it. But so one of the things that came out in some discussions was that we want to make it a lot more explicit on when something gets deprecated and when something gets removed in the API. And just to be sure, the deprecation policy doesn't apply for things that are experimental. We explicitly call experimental. The deprecation policy doesn't apply until we call it stable. So we can just make breaking changes to experimental stuff without giving 6 months notice or whatever. But for things that we call out as stable, when we do a deprecation, we're going to call it out explicitly in the change log. We're probably going to send an email out to the dev list and user list. And we're going to give 6 months to people to adapt to the changes, which is probably 2 or 3 releases, I think. So with that, it means we can deprecate something and do a breaking change. I think it'll more easy to think about this in terms of the API, like the protos. It's a little hard to do some of this in things that don't involve the specific API, but when it involves the behavior in general. For example, we recently changed the ways the agents are handled when they partition and reconnected back to the master. So previously we used to just kill them after the rerest after partition, but right now we don't. And we could argue that that's a breaking change for people who depend on those semantics. But the thing that we did there was, at least for frameworks that depend on the semantics, we added a capability specifically that said, okay, if you're operating to this capability, your task would still get killed. So at least that semantic is preserved until you opt in. But if you have some other system outside, maybe it's service discovery system or something that's depending on this expectation that the agent is going to get a shutdown message and it's going to get a new ID, for example, that's not going to happen now. So for things like that, I think it's really hard to say we need to give a 6 months heads up for people. Like something like this might affect some people, might not affect most of the people. So it's sometimes a judgment call on people who are implementing it. And they probably, if you find something like this, it's probably worth calling it out on the dev list, saying that, okay, this is what we're doing. And if you're depending on certain behavior of the system, that's going to change in this release. So make sure you tell us if it's going to break your stuff. So for things like that, I don't know if deprecation policy applies really. Like we couldn't have said, okay, hey, this is going to change the agent partitioning behavior, not going to kill it anymore. So we're going to tell people, and then 6 months later, we're going to implement that feature. That's probably not going to happen that way. So I guess we need to strike balance in that. The other thing that we thought about was to make so one other thing that was kind of hard for people was, since we said people can upgrade from a release to a different minor release as long as it don't depend on deprecated feature, it was not really clear how one would know what are all these things that they're depending on that are deprecated or removed that they shouldn't be using before upgrading. So one thing is we wanted to make the upgrades doc a little more useful than what it is today, to explicitly convey to people that, okay, if they're in this version and they're going to this version, these are all the things that they need to look out for. And if they're using any of this, they should change it. And the other more sophisticated thing we could do is have some kind of binary, maybe the Mesos CLI, which could take 2 parameters and then spits out this information somehow. It figures it out, like say, hey, I'm upgrading from 1.1 to 1.8. What are the things that I need to look out for, the things that are removed, for example, between these versions that I shouldn't be using. And if you run that command in the CLI, that will spit out all the things like, okay, change this flag, it's removed. Don't do this environment variable here, depending on something like that. So that's one of the things that came out. What else? And explicitly call out when something goes from experimental to stable. That's one of the things that we haven't been doing. We are now aggressive in calling things experimental, which is good, it's great. No illusions there for people using them.
Right. Are we aggressive enough?
I think we're more aggressive than before.
I think we should call the protos experimental. If the thing is experimental. Like, are the pods protos labeled experimental?
It's not in the protos, maybe, yeah, but definitely in the changelog. Like if you see our changelogs now, most features we call out we call them experimental.
But pods is called experimental, but you might not realize that launch group is part of pods.
Yeah. I think I called it out as experimental as well in the changelog in the API changes section now. I'll double check, but
I feel like in the protos, we should just say experimental.
yeah, like add a comment.
And it's either scoped for just that message, or like you could put it above the message and then it's scoped for everything in that message. That would just be, there would be never any conflict about, I was using this proto, is it experimental or is it not?
I mean, would it also make sense if we just put it into an experimental proto namespace?
Then it's hard to roll from experimental into stable.
It's not backwards compatible.
What do you mean by roll?
It requires a rename.
But once it becomes non-experimental and stable, then you would have to move it out of that namespace. And then everyone who uses that feature would have to at the same time change their schedule. Or you would have to support both ways, experimental namespace and stable namespace at the same time for the next many releases to have made.
The way we currently qualify protos as deprecated, it would be nice to qualify them as experimental. It's just, I think we have to do it with a comment instead of with a brace or a bracket.
I think to Mesos' point, like, it would be nice to have some more explicit way to do this. And there may be some things that,
Yeah, but I think we should.
maybe not that particular implementation, but I think there's some other options as well.
Okay.
We could look at.
Yeah, so I think the bottom line is that I wanted to convey, and probably I'll update the doc to say this, is that V1 API doesn't mean we cannot change stuff. We can still change stuff because V2 is not going to come anytime soon unless we decide to do something drastically different with the API. And that might happen soon, I don't know, not on top of my head. On top of my head, it seems like gRPC or something like that would probably necessitate a V2. But otherwise, like changing proto fields or doing something like that, it's not going to necessitate a V2. Other thing with respect to the V2 stuff that we talked about a bit was we would definitely want to decouple the unversioned protos from the internal protos. That's been a bit of mess right now because the unversioned protos are used both by legacy frameworks and also Mesos internal. So we will do that before we even think about V2, is kind of decouple the V0 protos that are used by frameworks from the Mesos internal protos. We're going to pull them into a different internal namespace, make a copy and use that in our replicated log and all internal communication. And then so that any changes that we need to make for internal, it doesn't have to change the V0 protos for people. So that's something that we plan to do. That's first.
How long do you think Mesos should support V0 API?
I think since now V1 is called stable, I'm still hoping for at least one or two major frameworks to actually use it in production and confirm that it's good and it's working. And that's when we'll start the deprecation clock. And for that particular one, it's probably not 6 months. Probably going to give a longer one because that's a big change for a lot of people. So I wouldn't deprecate V0 as soon as something else that you would deprecate, like a portable field or something, or a flag or something. But V1, I would not deprecate V0 until someone tells me that they're using V1 in production and it actually works for like 3 months or something. So that's my current idea of it. Do you guys have any other suggestions?
So for the versioning thing, the compatibility guarantees that we are giving seem to be much weaker than what other projects give. So have we thought about relaxing them, meaning I should be able to upgrade from any Mesos version, meaning in 1.0 to any minor version in the 1.0 namespace. I still don't quite understand why we impose this extra restriction that we would only create V2 when something big happens, when there are other projects that seem to be having like multiple versions and they have like a much weaker upgrade restriction than what we seem to be giving. Because it seems to me like we would again have this version hell that I am stuck on an old Mesos version and I just can't upgrade to a recent version without doing a dance that I need to upgrade to this version and then upgrade to this particular version. So in short, I have two queries. Why do we still need to do this dance when we can do something maybe a better and then relaxing these things? And the second query is, why does V2 have to be so big? Why can't we have like, so to me it seems like it's just an API version, meaning every time we make an incompatible change, we should actually bump up the API version by one. Why it is like a pedestal that it's only to be done in like some special circumstances?
Well, if you do a version bump for every incompatible change, you'd have I think version explosion.
I agree, but do we?
Wait a sec. It's not unless you being careful about maintaining and evolving and developing, right?
What's that?
You can make certain things that's like changing drastically, but then as long as you make sure that old clients can still talk to it, you're not breaking the old clients, it's not preventing you from adding things that are drastically different, right? You just need to spend more effort in, making sure kind of the backwards compatibility works out. It's not.
Yeah, but I'm saying like right now, like V0 to V1 itself, we haven't had any people upgrade.
Yeah,
And if you have V1, V2, V3, V4, V5,
yeah,
I don't think anyone is gonna do that upgrade.
But that happened because we didn't actually have the infrastructure in place, meaning we didn't have anything that, in fact, just creating the V1 protocol was such a pain. But now that we have an infrastructure in place, maybe the other iterations might be much more straightforward. And plus, regarding the version explosion thing, when you go from V1 to V2, you won't actually call a V2 stable as soon as you make a V2. It would be called stable after a certain point of time. So you still have a time window in which any incompatible changes that you make to V1 can still be made to a V2. So you won't easily get into the versioning hell, meaning you won't actually create V3 instantly as soon as you notice an incompatibility with a V2. So you would let V2 wait or like bake for some amount of time. I don't know if we should create a V1 beta and then V2, but that's another orthogonal discussion.
The initial problem that you presented, which is that you can't jump from 1.0 to 1.10,
yeah,
is not exactly what the node said. The node said you have to maybe change a flag and change a couple protos to do that jump, but then it should be feasible. It's not necessarily that you couldn't jump that far. The guarantee that we are making is that you can jump within 6 months without having to change something.
Yeah, but 6 months is just a 3 releases, and as an operator, it's really hard for me to know what do I need to change. If it's just some flags.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, if we add that bit of tooling, I mean, it would make it easier, but like to me, it's still, there are few things that we can improve ourselves, meaning when we do this protocol evolving thing. So we, of course, we can have some tooling that makes things easier for operators, but we might not even get to that, meaning we should be able to handle this ourselves in our code and not bother the operators. To me, it seems like as an operator, it's a.
Well, we do that. That's the deprecation for it. We already do the handling for it.
Only for those 6 months, yes.
Yeah, because otherwise it becomes a burden on us.
The thing to keep in mind is we tie this version to the actual version of the project. So V3 API is going to be Mesos 2.
Why?
We don't have to, but if we don't do that, then we're going to potentially have a lot of versions in our framework API, but like for flags, for example, how do you know? Like, do we have to have Mesos? Do we have to go from Mesos 1 to Mesos 2 to remove the agent work to? Because if that's Mesos 2.0,
I
probably not.
think command line flags are a different thing. Yeah.
Why?
Because they're much easier to change than an API. For example, I mean, I as an operator, I can change the flags I set in Mesos, right? But if I use a framework that I don't control, I cannot upgrade because that framework may not be actively developed anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Are we talking? Yeah.
So then we'll have different roles for framework API, different roles for operator API, different roles for flags, different roles for environment variables.
It's a judgment call, right? It's not that which form isn't important, right? What's important is, can you safely upgrade multiple components without worrying that, or sometimes it's impossible to upgrade two components that are talking to each other. In general, the flags are okay because you probably have the tooling to update the flags before you pull down the new version of the binary. something like that, which could make it easy to upgrade both. But in some other cases, it might not.
So how do we make that calm?
Make that
There's also the internal component communication. Like, do we let you jump the master 6 versions while the agent is still in the version? In some cases, that makes us accumulate on technical debt because we have to maintain old code paths for a long time because we never know when it's safe to remove them. That's
probably the biggest reason that we have this time box thing is in the code, it's really hard to say we're going to keep some code path for 2 years. If we do some changes that need something drastically different. For example, if we change the ping pong protocol tomorrow and then we'll have this after 6 months, we're not going to have that code. If we have that code and the new code, it's probably going to be a nightmare to maintain.
So that's the other element, which is, do the developers need to spend a whole lot of time to adapt? For Mesos components, I think it's a lot easier because you generally, I mean, the code is there. If you use Mesos, you use both master and the slave. If you upgrade them in separate times, like one is like a day after another, it's pretty easy to manage. But if I have to modify Thermos to adapt the removal of an environment variable, it's way harder, months harder. So
we have 6 months. Assuming you're staying with head, like upgrading one new release.
6 months for that seem to be manageable. I can't say if that's for everything. Like if I'm starting fresh and I need to adapt to V1 API, it may be well over 6 months.
Yeah, so the minimum is 6. I think there are things that we are going to decide, like deprecating V0, where we acknowledge it's harder and we'll make it a longer period.
Like, are there specific, I guess I'm probably looking for some more concrete cases today that we could use to kind of define this. Like health checks, for example, was one case where we said it was clearly the wrong thing to do because of the mismatched assumptions. But if it was clearly communicated that it was experimental, could we have changed the proto after 6 months?
But if it's experimental, I think you can change it anytime.
Yeah. Okay, if it's not experimental, could we have changed it after 6 months if we said, okay, we think actually this doesn't make sense. We could actually make it better and the code better to use that. Could we have changed it?
Ideally, you should have had another protocol made your code handle both, and then once a V2 came out, then you can actually delete that code, and that's what other projects do. And if we are not able to do that, we should think about doing that.
That's why I think doing that is a lot of work in the code.
But that makes the life of operators and users much more easier, right? So you have this.
I think we do that when it's relatively straightforward for us to do.
Yeah, I think when we can do, we do it, right?
Yeah, I agree.
This is about the ones where it's really, really hard.
Yeah.
Maybe it just means that features have to be designed more carefully so that we don't need to change them anytime soon, right? The problem is, as a user of Mesos, for us, we don't always control everything that we run. So as soon as something is a breaking change, and even for the things we control, we had some surprises sometimes, where a field that was optional was still optional in the protobufs, but was actually validated by the master that it was set, and if not, the call has been rejected, something like that. So in those cases, even if we control the scheduler, it could be surprising for us.
Those were like mistakes, I would imagine, right? Those are mistakes that we made in terms of setting expectations on something being optional in the proto was actually being semantically required maybe there's an expectation that was not properly communicated.
Well, it was not before.
Yeah, and that was a mistake, that it was optional in the proto, but it was not required, but then suddenly made request that was a mistake to be done in the Mesos validator, especially if someone was depending on it, right? So that case, I think it's kind of clear that we shouldn't have done that. Sure, because if like someone was depending on it. But if we have told you that, okay, we are going to do it after 6 months, by deprecating this behavior that you cannot not set an optional field because we semantically need it, just optional because of whatever legacy reason. And maybe in Protobuf 3, everything is optional, so we don't even have this thing. There's something that we might actually have to reject, even though it's optional, because there's no optional in Proto anymore. So in that case, we have to set right expectations, and if we break them, sure, it's a bug and we'll fix it. But I think we're talking about what should be the expectation for developers and users of Mesos, which is reasonable on both sides of the aisle. Like, yes, could define perfect APIs that never change, but that's not reality. Things change, we find out things that don't work, or maybe one lesson is we don't call things stable too aggressively. Sure, I think we're getting there now. We're making it more and not calling it stable until someone tries to use it in production, which is probably a good thing to do.
Yeah, so another bit was that when we agreed on the 6 month a number initially in the versioning doc, we used to do a release every month. So it gave like a user.
No. When I wrote that doc, I told that we're going to do 2 month releases. Well, yeah, when
we wrote like one version of the doc earlier.
Yeah, when I wrote the API section of the doc, maybe we didn't decide about the cadence.
Essentially, the another orthogonal question is a 3 releases enough? Do we think that most operators would actually upgrade their clusters?
It's a time period, right? Releases don't matter.
You can jump more. It's just that you might have to make some adjustments, right? Like, this is an insurance policy. Hopefully, we never have to use it, right? Ideally, the APIs would be perfect, or it would be simple enough to have 2 messages and handle both. But this is our way of getting out of a really tough situation.
Like it's not like there are different things. Adding something, as long as it's not required, is never a problem, right?
Right, yeah. And I think that's what we want to do. This is short. In the case where it's very hard for us to do, we want an insurance policy.
The thing in cases where things have to be changed, don't we have to, at least for some releases, support both ways anyway? So the question is, if we have to support both ways for a certain time, why don't we just keep that support?
Because it's just that thing and then something else and something else, and then they all have to be supported in a parameterized way, and the tech debt builds up. So we introduced bugs, right? The risk is that there are these subtle bugs hiding behind these multiple implementations.
And they might become compounded, right? Like you have 3 different variations of this code and 3 different variations of this code that.
But I guess if we really reach the point where we have 3, 4 versions of the same call, then there's a completely different problem, right?
Remember, that's
if stuff changes that often and breaking changes have to be made that often.
It's the old and it's the new, but that might happen for 3 different features, right? And sure, yeah, it's a Cartesian product of those that we have to figure out and test and make sure there are no bugs. That's the issue. So if we do one of these deprecations every 3 months, and we have a 1-year support cycle, we have this matrix of 3 by 3 or 4 by 4. And
so I think 6 months in general, it's good. I guess one thing I didn't think that we wanted to be conservative about is the major version. I think, if the semantics is built in Sandbar and everybody understands it.
Yeah, I think with respect to versioning, I think what most projects do with version upgrades is that they do breaking changes when they go to V2, which is not something we wanted to do with our version upgrades because it's not something we can afford to, because we want people to be able to upgrade clusters like. So there's no way we can do a V2 where we don't support every 1.9 speaking client when we go to 1.9 to 2. So that's not an option for us. I think it's a little different in how something like Ubuntu does version upgrades, where they do every 2 years, versus how we are thinking about upgrades. Because even if we bump major version, we have to support the previous version backwards compatibility guaranteed. Otherwise, they cannot live upgrade. It's not an option.
The number also instills fear. We bump the major version, people are afraid of what's going to change. Look how few people move to V1 API. I don't think we could bump it regularly and expect people to just, oh yeah, it's no problem.
So, but I think moving from V0 to V1 is, the problem with that is that it's not, you have to change a couple of things, but there's simply no clients out there. So you would have to build everything yourself, and it's not as straightforward as one would think.
The same thing would happen in V2. If you go to gRPC or something, WebSockets or something, it's still going to make.
I don't quite understand how the transport is related to a version change, because the transport should be completely separate from the protocol top of that, right?
Yeah, but if it's gRPC, the API is going to change. Like the way they will specify the API is going to change. gRPC has a different way of specifying the protocol. It's not going to look like Output does.
Okay.
At least the calls and responses, it's going to have completely different RPC syntax, which the clients had all changed. I think it's still going to be a major change for clients to go from V1 to V2.
If we make the gRPC changes.
Yeah, that's right. Or something like that, yeah.
Like now at least you have consistency that when there's a major version change, you kind of know it's big. If we just bumped it every time something was incompatible, you would like, oh, version 2 to 3, oh, that one's easy because it's just the same protocol.
But I don't think that's what anyone suggested.
Yeah, but I don't think that is what I suggested. I suggested that once you bump up, you would actually, so V2 would be sort of like a V1 alpha, meaning it would be the next stable version of your API, which you would only bump like when you want to make a major upgrade. It's just that you are encouraging people to use that version. And once, so more incompatibilities you find with your V1, you would actually include it in that, but you won't be creating like versions as soon as you found incompatibilities. That is not what I suggested, and that is not what other projects also do.
But we'd still be maintaining 3 APIs.
So you would essentially be maintaining V0, V1 and V1 alpha, which would be the next V2.
So wait, so saying if someone needs something in the V1 API and that needs a backwards incompatible change, we tell them to switch to V2 API?
Yeah, or so when someone needs something that actually breaks the API, it would become a V2. But so what I essentially want to say is it would be V2 with an extended period, meaning we can actually break stuff in that particular V2. It's not like the V.
But why would anyone use that? Yeah. If it's going to break in the next for 1 year, no one is going to use that in production.
So
it means you can't use the backwards incompatible thing in prod.
I don't know how it helps necessarily if you do that.
It's a giant hammer for something we want to like coarse grain think.
Okay, how about this? So yes, it's true that regardless of major or minor version, every upgrade, at least adjacent upgrades, need to be backwards compatible. So if it's 0.2028 to 1.10, it has to be backwards compatible. That's by design, that's totally fine. But having the major versions,
more than adjacent.
It would be like 6 months.
Well, that's a minimum requirement. Okay. But major versions allows you to say that, yes, we are only gonna maintain these major versions in terms of APIs. If we're older than that, don't expect anything. So that actually helps you be clear about what's not supported, because you can be very selective that we're just gonna support. We're currently at V3. We're only gonna support V2 and V3. If you're V1 and V0, just don't even bother. If you don't have that semantics, then you're trying to say, oh yeah, I'm at 2.20. And we kind of support the upgrade from 2.15. So that actually makes it harder if you don't have the way to very clearly communicate what are the supported versions.
Until the next one is considered stable, though, no one's going to run it in production, right? So it means that if we build a feature now and it requires a backwards incompatible change, we have to put it in V2. No one's going to run that feature in prod until 2018.
Well, you can add
Which
that
means
with a
we
different
won't have-
message to the old API.
I mean, if we could, we would. I think that's obvious, right? If we could, we would. We're talking about a situation where we cannot, or we prefer not to because of it introduces too much complexity. If it was something that we could have done by adding a new message or optional field, of course we will do that.
Yeah, I guess what I was
This is
referring
the
to
edge
was
case scenario.
when you actually break something, you would actually create a new uploadable V1 alpha, which would be your new internal uploadable. Any incompatible change you make to V1, you would create another message for that particular type, and you would have a V1 alpha, which would eventually become your internal uploadable. And this V1 alpha, you would actually use it as your internal uploadable for the time being. When you move V1 alpha to being a V2, that is when you would say like you would get rid of all your tech depth. But effectively, this means that
Then no one is going to use the V2 alpha.
yeah, essentially, but what you would do is you would create another call for that particular type, meaning if you are making a backward incompatible change to an existing uploadable, you would need to spawn another uploadable for that. So essentially, if you are making a backward compatible change to call uploadable, you would need to create another call to uploadable. And then you would say to all the developers that if you have to use this feature in V1, this has to be used with call to uploadable. Eventually, when you move to V2, you can again start using the call uploadable.
How is that different than adding a new message to V1?
Yeah, it's the same. It's just that it gives you stricter backward incompatibility, a guarantee that anyone who is relying on the call uploadable, if he actually upgrades across versions, he still can.
So I don't quite see the difference between this and, for example, if we now introduce V2, we still have to support V1, right? In its full feature set. We cannot say, oh, this is too much tech debt. Now we remove certain features from V1 to make it easier to implement V2.
Mm-hmm.
So we should wrap up.
Okay. Do you have anything on the agenda? Anything else or?
So the version doc thing is on the agenda. I think that was added by Tim, but I don't see him on the call.
Okay.
So maybe we'll talk about it next time.
Yeah, I think just another point we wrap up. The other thing for the API that I want to bring up is not just a framework API. There's also like operator APIs that people depend on.
Agent API.
Yeah, and changing those, if we kill a metric, can we not do that in V1? Do we have to wait until V2? Because service discovery system cannot be upgraded, and it's probably as much work as upgrading a framework. Do we not do that change anymore? I think this applies to lots of other cases as well. So we need to be really cognizant of the effort here that needs to be undertaken.
So metric, right now, don't even have any guarantees, right?
We do in V1. There's a V1 API for metrics. It's experimental, so there are no guarantees. Once it's stable, we'll have the guarantee. Then are we not going to change a metric field?
Just a key and a value, right? What he means is that you don't have a current. So the metrics protocol that you're talking about has just two fields, key and value, right? We haven't standardized the metrics per se, meaning to be still a guarantee that we have a metric called A in a 1.0 and we will still keep it across 6 months, is what I think he's asking.
Well, metrics is one example, I guess, but I'm pretty sure there are examples in V1 which are probably as hard to change.
So essentially,
the operator API.
Yeah, so essentially, the question is we should ideally decouple API changes from functional changes, and hopefully have either have different sets of guarantees for them, or if it becomes much convoluted, then we should have the 6-month thing, which to me is fine too.
I think we all agree that we would not be doing incompatible changes in APIs as much as possible. I think that's what we all strive for sure. And having the calls and events will make it easy. For sure, that's one of the reasons why we did the calls and events. But I'm guessing there are going to be cases at some point where someone is going to come along and say, hey, I don't want this environment variable, this is confusing, I want to change it. Is that, oh, you can't do it, you have to keep that until V2. I think that's going to be a bit painful. I would
So then
imagine.
get proposed to dev and people are still gonna give their feedback, right?
Yeah, so I'm going to draft an email, or maybe a doc, I don't know.
But even a deprecation change itself is gonna get proposed. And
Oh, yeah.
as a community, we can decide, well, we just don't wanna do that because it's too hard, or we should bump it to a year.
So are there any other specific cases today that you guys are worried about, which are not like mistakes, but actually you were saying this is how we're gonna do it?
So, well,
Vinod, Anand, Ian, and Dario, maybe yours, you guys can talk about that.
Yeah, we can take it offline after this.
I will close this.
You can wrap it up?
Yeah.
Okay. We have some remote folks here.
Yeah, how's that Jose and James joined us? So thanks for joining us, guys. Talk to you later.
Oh, he left.
Okay.
Okay. It's pretty late for him.
All right, bye.
See you guys.